Well, hey there. It's Christian Walsh with Wire Associates, and we're here for another live stream. There's some big updates to share with you related to LA County and LA City. So we are excited to be here. And these things are fun. And it's been a day of nonstop technical difficulties. So hopefully I got those all ironed out and everything will go okay on this one. So we're going to run through a few different things. We're going to talk about the LA County vote that was done by the Board of Supervisors yesterday. That's big news. We're going to talk a little bit about LA City as well, some of the deadlines. We already have some questions related to past rent and other things like that. So let's dive in. First thing I want to do is thank those folks for coming out, including All Night Hider. He has to do some chicken farming, so he hopes to be back in time for this. So All Night Hider, make sure you get that chicken farming done. I appreciate you wanting to tune in, but why is this chicken farming so important? So anyway, a couple of quick things. Don't forget, as we always say, we can't give tax or legal advice, but for the most honest and up-to-date real estate advice, subscribe to this channel. So make sure you turn to an attorney. What we're trying to do is give you the knowledge to know the right questions to ask an attorney so that whether you're a tenant or a landlord, you will have what it is that you need to ask the appropriate questions. So let's dive in a little bit to talk about the motion that was passed, or I should say not passed, yesterday in the LA County Board of Supervisors. So as we all know, for LA County, they have continued to extend the eviction moratorium for those who couldn't pay due to COVID. So the non-payment of rent due to COVID. The last extension put us through March 31st, 2023. And the big question was, is it going to be extended yet again, like it has been many, many times? Well, the short answer is it was not extended. It actually died last night, and there isn't more time. They're not going to have any additional meetings of the Board of Supervisors before the 31st because they have spring break next week. So there's no meetings next week. So it will end. The protections that are in place for LA County will end on the 31st. So that's important news. Now, there's some confusion. So there was a vote at the LA County Board of Supervisors, and what was it that they were actually voting on? So this is the motion. We'll run through it very quickly because it was shot down, at least half of it. So we don't need to belabor it. What it was attempting to do was to put into place some additional protections for LA County tenants from basically no fault evictions. So what it was going to do is going to expand it to all of LA County. So even if a local area like LA City had their own ordinance in place, their own renter protections, this was going to supersede that and change it dramatically. And it was going to be very difficult for a landlord to get a tenant out. And it was also going to prevent rent increases in all of LA County for every property of more than 3% a year. So I know some folks think that's a great idea. The problem was there's nothing in here for those who are looking for protections due to non-payment of rent due to COVID. There was nothing in here. That was not in this ordinance. So basically, no matter what, even if this did pass last night, there would have been no additional protections for non-payment of rent due to COVID-19. So that's an important point. It didn't have anything to do with that. So just so you understand, a tenant can be evicted anywhere in LA County as of April 1st if they do not pay rent. There are no additional protections for tenants for non-payment of rent, no matter what the reason non-payment of rent was. And again, this legislation, this piece of that was in front of the Board of Supervisors was not going to provide that protection at all. It wasn't in there. These are more permanent renter protections that they were trying to put into place. So these things were shot down. They bifurcated this ordinance, and by bifurcation they mean they split it. So the 1 through 4 was there were 2 fours, 2 against, 1 abstain. So it was shot down. These 5 through 9 were actually passed. And what it is it's some reporting back to the county. And it's also helping to expand outreach about some of the tools, like they have the Tenant Power Toolkit, which is for tenants to respond to unlawful detainers. And I've done a video on that. And also talks about Stay Housed LA. And Stay Housed LA is for tenants to call. And one important point that came up in the meeting yesterday, Stay Housed LA, so you're going to visit stayhousedla.org, they have funds available for tenants to help pay for back rent. So tenants, if you're not able to pay rent, make sure you reach out to Stay Housed LA. There's $45 million that have been set aside in LA County that should be distributed to help tenants catch up. But we don't yet have a deadline or a date on when those funds will go out. So that's another important point. So these items here, these do not have anything to do with at fault or no fault evictions, extending anything due to non-payment of rent due to COVID. These are simply expanding awareness and then reporting back to the Board of Supervisors. And then they're going to help out any cities within LA County that want to put in place their own renter protections. They're also there to help. So important to understand that, and important to understand that as of March 31st, the special protections that have been put in place are going to be ending. So that I wanted to make clear because there was definitely some confusion on that. All right, so let's dive into a few questions that came in before the live stream. Again, let's see what happens with technology here. 1 second. Let's see. And of course, I'm having a tech issue. That goes without saying. Give me 1 second. I'll get that up there. So let's see. There were 2 questions that we have. Let me get these larger so you can read them, and then we'll discuss them. They're important questions. All right. So, Carol, I appreciate the support. I appreciate your questions. So due to the homeless crisis, maybe address evictions due to not having due to having another person not on the lease staying with you temporarily. So that's a great question. There aren't any protections for tenants who move in after March 31st. But if you had an extra person move into your unit, or you have an animal that's in your unit with you that's a pet that's helping you, like an emotional support animal, even if the lease says you can't have that, a landlord can't evict you for those things. So there are actually different dates here, and I'm going to run through those dates. LA City gives you more time if you have an additional tenant that's moved in, or if you have or there's a pet that's moved in. So LA City gives you more time. LA County doesn't give you as much time, but in both cases, it'll be a 30-day notice, and we will run through that right after this. Next question is from Abraham. So this is another big question, and a question a lot of folks have, which is about back rent and moving forward with evictions. So if a landlord received rental assistance for a certain period and the tenant hasn't paid beyond that rental assistance, assuming the rental assistance was for a defined period, how do you calculate essentially what's owed? And then how do you go about filing an eviction in LA County? So good question. And it covers a lot of different ground here. So if a landlord received rental assistance, or the money went to the tenant and then went to the landlord, typically through Housing is Key or some of the other programs, it's stipulated the months that it covered. So that's what's important. You go back to that and you look at what months that stipulated were covered for that rental assistance. So those months would be essentially off the table from being able to ask for back rent. Now, it gets complicated depending on which months you ask for, and I'll show you dates for that as well in a minute. But what is important to note is that if you are going to move forward with a notice for back rent before, and that would be rent anytime before March, basically March 2023 and before, there is a deadline in the back we'll discuss. But if you're going to move forward for that rent, you're going to need as a landlord to give a 30-day notice, not a 3-day notice. Once April 1st hits for LA County, and if rent is missed on April 1st, that will be a 3-day notice to pay or quit. No protections in place. So hopefully that makes sense. So that's only for rent that's March 2023 and before will the 30-day notice be required. So let's go ahead and look at some of those dates I was talking about. Hopefully this is making sense, and I see some questions coming in. We will get to those for sure. Okay, so this, I know it's a little tiny. Let me see if I can get this bigger. So this is an important one. So this, I presented this in previous videos, and this is a breakdown of important dates for LA County and LA City. So let's actually start with LA City. Now these have been revised. These haven't been revised since February, and really nothing much has changed since then. So that's why it's relevant. Had there been an extension or had that ordinance passed last night, the dates definitely would have changed. And I'm going to go into that too. Remind me to go into that in case I forget. So for LA City, they put in place their permanent renter protections. Those went into place January 27th. And I've done content on that. That's very important. This is more strict now than LA County for evictions. If you don't pay rent at all, I mean, you still do the 3-day notices to pay or quit. So you can still get people out for at fault, but no fault is strictly limited. So that was put into place in January 27th. Last day of the LA City Eviction Moratorium was January 31st. And that has obviously since passed. But what ended up happening is it fell into LA County. So the protections in LA County that go through the March 31st, those have been essentially overlaid over LA City. So that's important to note. Owner move-in potentially could have started on February 1st, 2023, some of those notices. But I have been telling clients to be safe, what you should really do is wait until the LA County protections ended on March 31st before you attempted that. And then here's the difference to answer Carol's question about unauthorized pets or people. So in LA City, they have a full year and a little bit less than a year now, but it's February 1st, 2024 that an unauthorized pet or person can stay there. After once February 1st, 2024 hits, landlord will have to give a 30-day notice. And then here it covers back rent. So Abraham's question, it will depend on which months that ultimately you decide to go after for back rent. So because a tenant has until these dates to repay. So if it's rent in LA City from October 1st to January 31st, 2023, October 1st, 2021 to January 31st, 2023, tenants must pay it by February 1st, 2024. So tenants still have time to pay that rent. So you theoretically could attempt to move forward with an eviction, talk to an attorney, but the tenant still has time to pay that back. And that's LA City. And let's look at LA County. Going through this. Hope you guys are still asleep. I know I'm covering a lot of stuff. So LA County. So again, this all stays put. As of February 15th, I created this. So the last day of the LA County Eviction Moratorium protections will be March 31st. So in LA County, if you have an unauthorized pet or person, as of April 1st, 2023, evictions can start for that with a 30-day notice. So there's a full extra year in LA City. Back rent, I already mentioned this. It needs to be a 30-day notice for rent that was due between July of 2020 and March 31st, 2023. And then evictions are possible for non-payment of rent, COVID-related or not. As mentioned, on April 1st, if a tenant does not pay their rent April 1st, theoretically, they can be evicted, 3-day notice to pay or quit. So that's important to understand. April 1st, 2023, all no-fault evictions can move forward for non-RSO properties and properties that paid rent during COVID. So that is an interesting loophole that if a tenant is in a non-RSO property and paid their rent all through COVID, they can have their tenancy terminated through a no-fault eviction, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But if they didn't pay their rent, they can't have that terminated. So it's almost a penalty for paying your rent. So that it was a weird loophole, and I was talking to this attorney, Kenny, who I recommend if you guys need help. Kenny and I were talking about that, how that doesn't make sense. Don't penalize the people who paid rent, but whatever. So then paying back rent in LA County, residents have up to 12 months to repay any past rent due. So again, attempting to evict for rent that wasn't paid due to COVID in, let's say, January of 2023, they still have 12 months to repay it. So that might stymie that. Okay, let's see. All right, let's see some of the questions here. All right. Ginger, Ginger has some good stuff here. Let's read through here. So she's a landlord of a long-term rental, completely unaffected by the pandemic, because she offers her rental through the housing authority. That's an important point, landlords. And she says, as a landlord, she feels for other affected. But that's an important point, Ginger. So when you get your money from the housing authority, and that could be Section 8 voucher program, for example, those landlords receive their rent all through COVID. There's only been one time in relatively recent history where landlords didn't get paid for Section 8 in those voucher programs. And that was when there was a government shutdown. That is possible based on some of the craziness now. It could happen again. Bear that in mind. But during COVID, if you had Section 8 or another voucher program, your tenants, you got paid. Now, maybe you didn't get paid everything. Maybe the tenant wasn't able to pay their portion, but at the very least, you got a lion's share. So anyway, that's an important point, Ginger. Thank you for bringing that up. And then let's see, she goes on. So my question, the moratorium in place, not so much to protect the tenants that may be facing hardships, but rather that they know the chaos and carnage ending this is going to cause. Great question. And that's, so there was a lot of talk about an eviction wave or an eviction cliff after these protections ended. And what I need you to remember in the state of California is AB 2179, which I did a bunch of content on. I was there since the beginning, covering all the eviction moratoria, trying to keep tenants and landlords so they understood what was going on. So AB 2179 was the last statewide legislation related non-payment of rent due to COVID. That ended July 1st, 2022. So a lot of areas, the majority of California, no longer had protections for renters who couldn't pay due to COVID after July of 2022. Now, there were quite a few evictions. I've talked to a lot of tenants who weren't able to pay rent and they were moving down the eviction path. Now, some of them weren't evicted immediately because their landlords didn't do the process right. They didn't do proper noticing, et cetera. So those unlawful detainer actions were not effective. They didn't go through. But there has been an increase in evictions. There's no denying that. And as far as a cliff goes, there is a possibility there will be an increase in evictions after March 31st. But the important thing to remember is that even under the LA County and LA City Eviction Moratorium, the evictions could move forward recently for non-payment of rent that wasn't COVID related. So there were evictions moving forward for that. And these protections that were put in place were meant to be a cliff. I'm sorry, the protections that were put in place were meant to be an affirmative defense. So a landlord could still move forward with an unlawful detainer. It was up to the tenant to use the fact that they couldn't pay rent due to COVID-19 as an affirmative defense, to answer the unlawful detainer and then present that to the judge if required. So it was an affirmative defense. So landlords are still moving forward with evictions. So they've still been going on. There is a chance that there will be an increase, of course, and that is unfortunate. But there are still funds out there. Like I said, Stay Housed LA does have some funds according to the LA County Board of Supervisors. So make sure you reach out to stayhousedla.org so that you can ask for those funds if you need them. But the Board of Supervisors meeting, ultimately what it came down to was some of the members on the board said, we don't have an excuse to extend this anymore. The COVID emergency is over. Yes, there is a homelessness emergency that we can use, but this has been in place for 3 years now, the protections for renters. So at some point in time, they're going to have to pull the Band-Aid off and let things move forward. So that was one of the things that came up in the Board of Supervisors meeting. So hopefully that answers that question. All right. Let's see what Oh, good. So on night hider, if you're here in the beginning, he's back. So he's done with his chicken farming. Thank you for getting back in here. I love it. I love it. Um, let's see. Oh, okay. Here, Ginger again. So, would this have a direct hit on the housing market, surge in inventory, declining home values? Um, so your prediction that they're going to extend Ginger, that's not true. They're not going to extend it. So I've been talking about it in my market updates. There will be more inventory in Los Angeles because landlords are going to want to sell. In fact, we've just opened up an office in Los Angeles to help landlords sell. Now tenants are out there saying, well, why would you do that? Well, we're going to follow the letter of the law. Los Angeles now is a patchwork of different weight or different legislation related to terminating tenancies and selling. LA City is very different from LA County, and then other cities within LA County have their own ways of terminating tenancies. So we're doing it to follow the letter of the law to make sure that tenants' rights are followed and that they receive the treatment that they deserve under the law, and then helping landlords understand, no, in LA City, you can't just not put in a 60-day notice on the door without a reason on there and say you have to be out in 60 days. You can't do that in LA City. There's certain steps you have to follow, and we've released other content. So yes, there will be a surge in inventory, and there's still landlords that basically haven't been able to receive their rent for a while who are losing their properties to foreclosure. I've actually been talking to several landlords who have lost their properties, losing their properties, or they won't be able to make additional payments on their properties. So there's going to be a surge in inventory because of that. So yeah, there will be more. I don't know if there will be enough to affect values that much in Los Angeles, but it is possible. And then don't forget, there's going to be plenty of properties that, like RSO properties in LA County, where they have to be sold with the tenants in place, and there's no big urgency necessarily for those properties to be sold. So there's a whole bunch of properties there's no urgency for those to trade. So hopefully. A lot of people are predicting that the moratorium will be extended, and it will not be extended. The eviction moratorium for LA County will not be extended. It's over. They can't meet again because they're going on spring break, like I said before. So there's no meeting. Now, that doesn't mean when their next meeting, which I believe is April 4th, they may not put things into place. And like I said, they bifurcated and split some of that other stuff in there. So they're going to get reports back. So maybe they'll want to put some stuff into place. I have one commenter that I want to make sure I feature. Gigi's World of Gigi. So I am so glad you've asked me this question, Gigi. Gigi wants to know, what is my favorite thing to do? And Gigi happens to be my daughter, who has her own YouTube channel. That's it right there. And we work together occasionally, but she creates a lot of videos on her own. So one of my favorite things to do, Gigi, is to hang out with you and mommy and Logan, Liam, and Bella. That's my whole little family, plus the grandparents and all of them. But that's one of my favorite things to do, Gigi. So there you go. All right. So let's see. Ginger, I'm gonna put you up here again. You got a lot to say. I like this. It makes sense that it would end now. Wait for a Black Swan event. Everything will implode, and they'll blame it on bank failures. That's actually the uncertainty that's out there right now in the real estate market. I know this isn't about a market update about the market, but the uncertainty out there does make it difficult for people to want to go out there and buy. But investors know when there's uncertainty, like this is the best time to be writing offers, because so many people are sitting on the sidelines and are scared to write offers. That's the best time to be writing offers. When everything is perfect, when the economy is amazing, and it's so obvious you should go out and buy, well, a bunch of people are going to say the same thing. So that's not where you're going to want to be writing offers. And as far as a Black Swan, yes, there's a possibility there's more Black Swan events. I'm sure there will be, but I keep hearing about these Black Swans, and everybody keeps saying, well, the next Black Swan, the next Black Swan. So, well, I'll report about them on the channel. Let's see. Okay, all night hider. So rents can go up though, right? Yes, that's a great question. So in the motion that was going in front of the LA County Board of Supervisors, they were going to cap rent increases on all properties to 3% in LA County. That did not pass. So let's talk about rent increases. If it is an RSO, rent stabilized property in LA City or LA County, there are no rent increases for at least until February of 2024, at least a year. There will not be any rent increases for RSO properties. For non-RSO properties, there's AB 1482, and that was brought up in the LA Board of Supervisors meeting. We've done a bunch of content, and we will bring that up because it's highly relevant. So for properties that are subject to AB 1482, that would be essentially any duplex or bigger that is 15 years or older. So it's a rolling timeline. Those properties are subject to AB 1482. The maximum rent increase is 5% plus CPI with a cap of 10% total. So that means right now the maximum rents can be increased is 10% if it's subject to AB 1482. If it's exempt from AB 1482 and the tenant needs to get that exemption, and that's most condos and townhomes throughout California, then as long as they've received the exemption language, a landlord can increase the rent any amount they want to. Bear in mind, 10% or less is a 30-day notice. Anything above 10% in a year's time is a 90-day notice. And there's one other important caveat. In LA City and probably other areas throughout California, there is something new, and I haven't done a video on it. It's coming next week probably. So in LA City, if you give a rental increase of 10% or more, and the tenant decides to move out because of that rent increase, then the landlord will owe relocation assistance. So just bear that in mind. Long answer to a crazy short question, but yes, rents can go up in many cases. All right. Hey, Al, good to see you, bud. I haven't seen you in a little while. I'm glad you're back, and thank you for the compliments there. Carol, I'm going to put up compliments. This is nice. Taking a complex subject and breaking it down. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. So, all right, Al, this is actually a good one to address. So regarding lease contracts, what are the best sources? And this is off topic. This is not LA City or LA County, but we'll loop this in because this is important to landlords and tenants in LA City and LA County. The best source for a rental agreement or a lease is either a real estate agent, so the CAR form, or an association like GLA, AAOC, CAA. Those are some of the apartment associations. So even if you have one house that you rent out, I recommend that you join an apartment association to get the lease. Now, the most important thing about the lease is to make sure it comes from those sources and that it's new. That's just before I was going live, I was talking to a tenant of mine, or I was talking to a client. It's a client that I'm working with. It's a landlord who's leasing out his unit, and he wants to use an old lease that was 6 pages. And because it was easy, it was quick, I said, no, you can't use that. You have to use the most recent one. And then we spent 45 minutes where I helped him fill it out. So it's not quick. It's not easy. There's a ton of pages, but that's because that's required under California law. There's a lot of disclosures. So that's an important thing. And I'm going to release more content on that at some point in time, Al, because a lot of people just Google it up, like Liam says, my son, and they don't find the right thing for a lease. Okay, let's see. We've got a good question from Jill. So can just causes be used to terminate a tenancy and property be sold? Where do we find the updated relocation fees and guidelines? Great question. So it's really, Jill, going to boil down to where the property is. So in LA City, and you can get, here, let's share the website. You can get this from LA City's website, but honestly, I mean, not to basically toot my own horn, but if you're going to sell your property, just reach out to us. That's what we're doing. And we're going to make sure you do it right so that it doesn't blow up. Because if a landlord does it wrong and doesn't give proper notice, then the tenant can fight back. And the tenant deserves proper notice. Like tenants, you deserve to have if you're going to have to move out because they're selling, you deserve your relocation assistance. So the LAHD website talks about the new LA City renter protections. And it has here some of the relocation assistance. It's funny, it's not on here. They're showing you, this is what I was talking about, the economic displacement, the more than 10% increase. We actually need to look at let's find their rental. Where is this is great when it's live. Like, see, this is the stuff I edit out, so you don't have to see me fumbling and finding stuff. So they have here's their list of reasons to evict. They have it all broken down. But what I'm actually looking for is their renter's notice, because their renter's notice, I did a video on that. Find my renter's notice video. That's where I run through their renter's notice, and that thing, yeah, here it is, the protections notice. It's going to download as PDF. You won't be able to see. Yeah, I can't see it. So I did this video on the renter protections. This breaks it down and shows how much relocation assistance is owed. But this is specifically for LA City. Remember, check Zemus, and there's a few other resources to find out if your property is in LA City. I'm always shocked. I've stopped trying to predict if a property is LA City or not. And I always double check because I'm shocked at how big LA City is, how big LA County is, everyone I check. So that would be LA City. The LA County, here's where it gets interesting. For a property that is exempt from AB 1482. So this is a house or a condo that's not owned by a corporation that has been given the AB 1482 disclosure, and that's the important key. It can be just a 60-day notice. No reason for the termination has to be given, and there's no relocation assistance that's owed. So if you have a house or condo in LA County and the tenant has been paying rent, they're not behind on rent due to COVID-19, then just a 60-day notice can get them out. But again, that's why you need to reach out to us. We're going to help you sort that out. So if you do want to sell, we're going to help you figure out the path that's going to get you there and make sure you color within the lines. That's the way I like to describe it. Like all these laws and regulations are coming at us from boards and everywhere. And what we try to do is help you color in the lines. That's all we're trying to do so that everybody's happy. All right. Okay, Kimberly. Hi, Kimberly. How you doing? So you live in South Bay and your rent went up 10% in February. So hopefully you were given proper notice and hopefully it was allowed to go up 10%. Hopefully you weren't under the RSO. That would be an example where it can't. And don't assume tenants and don't assume landlords that a property manager knows the law and has stayed up on this and is doing it right. And same thing with realtors. Don't assume if you hire a realtor that they automatically know and that they're doing it right. And don't assume, I hate to say this, don't assume all attorneys know the law and they're doing it right. You have to make sure that you're using professionals who know the law and stay up on the law. So, okay, Brittany, I appreciate that. Thanks for the kind words. So my landlord refused to cash my checks for 9 months and says they will evict me. I said, how? Certified receipts. Yeah, a landlord can't refuse rent for over 9 months and then attempt to evict you for non-payment of rent. So that definitely reach out to an attorney. As a tenant, if you need free or low cost assistance, you can reach out to lawhelp.org, or if you're in LA, stayhousedla.org, which I've mentioned a few times. They can connect you with an attorney as well. That'll be free or low cost assistance. But yeah, it sounds like a case of a landlord who really doesn't know what they're doing at all. Sorry to hear that. Junk Vista. This is a good question. Why is there no law allowing me to take food out of the supermarket without paying? It's a fair question. Why were landlords forced to shoulder the burden for so long? There's no right answer to that. Housing is a necessity. Food's a necessity. It's a complicated question. There was no right answer. But at some point in time, like LA County is doing, the Band-Aid had to come off. And landlords need to get paid. I think that's the bigger thing. There's money out there. Landlords getting paid means that tenants are getting their rent paid. Understand that. It's not landlords running off. It's money they were owed, and it lets tenants off the hook for those funds to get to the landlord. So I think that's the bigger thing. There's $45 million in Los Angeles that Los Angeles County is queuing up. Like, get those funds out there. Landlords need it. Tenants will be off the hook. Everybody will be happier. So, good, fair question. Yeah, as far as taking food, yeah. All right, let's see. Hey, Pinche. Good to see you. I've seen you around before. Tent City's getting out of hand here in LA. It's tough in LA. It really is. And there's no right answer. I want to release more content on topics like this, and I will get to that point. It's tough too. There's billions of dollars, literally. Proposition H in LA City passed Measure ULA. So that's a tax on the sales of properties that are 5 million and above. Those funds are going to be used to help the homeless as well. So hopefully these funds are actually put to good use. And some of the funds are going to be used to help tenants with legal assistance, which I think is a great use as well. So the tenants know their rights and can fight landlords that are doing it wrong. This channel, my goal is to help the landlords that want to do it right and the tenants who want to do things right. Those are the people who come to me. The people who aren't going to do things right and that the laws are trying to like force to do right. They don't care. They don't follow them. It's the good people on the landlord side, the good people on the tenant side that are trying to do things right. They're the ones that are affected the most. So let's see. Lots of good stuff. Okay, Amir, let's see. How you guys doing on time? I guess you can just leave when you're bored. At some point in time, I'll stop. On new tenants, ask for 2 months deposit and solvency from previous landlord. So Amir is right. So for a unfurnished unit in California, you can ask for up to 2 months rent. As far as previous landlord, I don't know what you mean by solvency, Amir, but you can do a rental verification from the previous landlord. That's what we do when we lease up a place. But just bear in mind that there's a limit to rental verification. They can put fake information on there. Now we have a few ways to work around that. We're not going to share because then people will figure that out. But it's not 100% accurate. And a landlord who really can't stand a tenant who we get on the phone for rental verification could give them a glowing review just to get rid of them. So that's the tough thing. But yeah, you can collect up to 2 months rent for an unfurnished unit, but you also have to kind of bear in mind, like we deal with some big expensive lease listings, for example, like a $13,000 condo. If you ask for 2 months rent for the deposit, there's $26,000, and then the first month's rent, that's $39,000 for a move-in. It's pretty expensive, but hey, you make that decision as a landlord. Oh boy, here is a great question, Al. Is it better from a landlord protection perspective to have LA County rentals, LA City, or some of the other cities? You want to know the real answer, Al? This the real answer is, quite honestly, LA has shown that being a landlord is going to be very difficult. And they're going to continue to force people to be landlords when they don't want to be a landlord. So the pressure builds up. We can expect that renter protections are going to continue to be layered on. So my advice, to be honest, is if you want to be a full-time landlord, you really should consider investing outside of Los Angeles. And that's sad that all these regulations that are forcing landlords to be landlords and making it tough for landlords to be in business are going to lead to landlords leaving, further exacerbating the problem of rentals and affordable rentals. So that's the unfortunate side effect of this. So yeah, I mean, my answer is get your money out of LA. That's the analytical side of me telling landlords that. There's the emotional side that's like, there's good people in LA that need somewhere to live. How can we provide housing for them? But if you're only going to have a few rentals, I don't think you really should have many in Los Angeles. The big corporations can come in, they can build huge properties, and maybe they can make it work. So let's keep going. Yeah, so there's some conversation here. LA City, LA County. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Jonathan, can you post a 60-day notice to vacate for extensive renovation in LA County without city rent control on April 1st? Yes, sir, you can. In fact, if it's exempt from AB 1482, if it is a house or condo and they've been given the exemption notice, you can post a 60-day notice without having to do an extensive renovation. You don't need to give any reason for the 60-day notice in LA County. If it's a non-owner occupied duplex or larger, then yes, you're going to need to give a reason and you will owe relocation assistance. So there's your answer there. LA City, no, you can't. It's different. Actually, technically, in LA City, you can post a 60-day notice to vacate for extensive renovation in LA City, but you're going to owe relocation assistance and you have to have your permits first, a bunch of other stuff. So make sure you reach out if you're in LA City and we'll make sure you jump through the hoops correctly. Yeah, so this HL, can you talk about the required 30-day notice for any property that received CARES funds? Yeah, you're right. It's very rarely mentioned, HL. I'm not 100% sure that it's actually still in effect. I think that expired, but that's why you are going to need to use, as a landlord, use an attorney who understands unlawful detainer actions in LA City or LA County. I have resources for that. So you can reach out for our list of attorneys. And then do bear in mind, like I said, that there will be a 30-day notice that's not related to the CARES Act that will be required for back rent, for rent before April in LA County. So just bear that in mind. So that's why you get an attorney involved. Oh, and then tenants, I just gave you the keys to the castle there. If you don't receive that 30-day notice, when you're required to receive that 30-day notice, guess what you have? When it moves to unlawful detainer, if it does, you have an affirmative defense that will get the case thrown out of court. So there you go. There's the keys to the castle. And yes, HL, that was a federal law. It was related to the CARES Act. Again, talk to an attorney to see if that's still in place. Oh boy, Gregory, it's tough to pass this one by. We'll loosely dovetail this into LA because LA has multifamily. So how is the upcoming crisis with commercial mortgages going to impact multifamily? Well, we see some financed landlords giving the property back to the bank. So that's a great question. We'll break that down. We'll start with the second part. So there already are landlords that are losing their properties to the bank. I've talked to several of them in LA, and there's a bunch that I know that didn't talk to me. We're actually going to break down, because we do foreclosure updates, we're going to break down a subset of LA data to see exactly who's being foreclosed on. So the upcoming crisis with commercial mortgages, to be honest, I don't think there's going to be a crisis. I don't see a lack of funding coming for multifamily. I could be wrong, but they tend to be Fannie and Freddie backed. There's Fannie and Freddie, the secondary mortgage market, back a lot of multifamily loans out there, and they're doing okay right now. So I don't think we're going to see a crisis for commercial mortgages for multifamily. An important thing to note. So commercial mortgages are for properties that are 5 units or larger. So anything that's 1 to 4 units, whether it's owner occupied or non-owner occupied, that's conventional financing. If it's 5 or more for multifamily, it's commercial. And you have to go to a special lender to get the commercial financing. It will not be fixed rate financing. It will be adjustable rate. So that's the other thing to bear in mind for commercial loans. Whereas your 1 to 4 properties, unit properties, that can be fixed rate conventional financing. It's a good question, Gregory, and one that I'd like your perspective. Reach out to me, Gregory, so I can hear what you have to say about that as far as a crisis. Diane, good to see you, Diane. Can you tell me where to find rental agreements that reflect all new rules in LA County? So that's a great question. So that's where an association is going to want you to, so that's where a landlord association really is helpful, particularly a local landlord association. They should be keeping up on that to know if there's any local disclosures. You're also going to want to, if you're using a realtor, make sure the realtor knows about local disclosures. So for example, in LA City, if you are renewing a lease or you have a new lease that you're putting in place as of the 27th of January, you need to include the renter's protection notice. I did a video on that. That has to be in there. So that is important. That would be a local disclosure that you need in addition to all those other pages. And we talked about in our 2023 update to laws. We always mention it. So you need lead-based paint if it's 78. Older than 78, you have to have that addendum in there. You have to have a bed bug addendum. Funny, some people think you only need that if you're providing beds, but no, everyone. So bed bug disclosure, you need the flood hazard, you need the AB 1482, whether it's exempt or not. And then there's a mold disclosure, a brand new one. You need that with some ugly pictures in it. And then in LA City, you'd add in the renter protections. So long answer to a short question there. Sorry. So, all right. Okay, here's another great one. I need to do something on security deposits. Al, can you charge extra for pet deposit over the limits? No. So you're capped at 2 months for a deposit for a unfurnished unit in California. So you can call it whatever you want. Key deposit, pet deposit, anything you want. It's the max is 2 months. That's it. That's all you can collect. And then there's no such thing as a refundable deposit in California. So you can't ask for a $300 non-refundable pet fee. That's a deposit, and it has the potential to be refunded. So, but to your next question, you can charge pet rent. Yeah, absolutely. And there's no limits. You could charge whatever you want that the market will bear. All right. Al Night Hider. Were they doing chicken farming with you? Were they hanging out with your kids? Yeah, I'm happy to hear you enjoy your family. That's great to hear. All right, let's see. Wow, lots of great stuff, you guys. Thank you for this. Okay, so just to recap here, Living Authentically with Carrie. Thanks for showing up. Will LA City have a meeting to extend? And if so, will that affect LA County? So it's very confusing, the fact that there's LA City ordinance, LA County ordinance. So LA City's eviction moratorium ended as of February, the end of February. So that, the end of January. So February 1st, it was over. February 1st, 2023, the LA City eviction moratorium was over. What they put into place were permanent renter protections, and those are going to be in effect for a while. So that is over. There's no extension that'll need to happen because it's over. And now there's new permanent renter protections put in. Then LA County, theirs is ending. Their temporary emergency renter protections will end March 31st. So that there will be no extension there. So I know it's confusing and all these layers, and then knowing like when LA City's ended, they fall into LA County. It's so amazingly confusing. But so that's a great question. So LA City, it's already into its permanent renter protections phase, so to speak. LA County didn't extend their eviction moratorium beyond March 31st and didn't add in any extra special permanent renter protections. That's what they were going to do in the meeting yesterday. Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. I might get myself in trouble. I don't read the whole comment. I just put it up if I like the beginning. Roche, how you doing? City of Yucaipa, San Bernardino. So San Bernardino, Riverside, Orange County, San Diego, with a tiny caveat there, their protections ended when AB 2179 ended on July 1st. So there's no additional protections there that are in place for non-payment of rent due to COVID-19. So it's a good question. It was just LA City and LA County that extended those protections and that are now ending. So no, nothing special in San Bernardino. All right. So many questions. I love this, you guys. Yeah, Kimberly, here, we'll put this up here. This is important. You're okay with the 10% better than having to move like they're trying to get me to do without proper procedure. See, I'm glad you called them on that. There's way too many agents, property managers, owners who are not doing things the correct way. So that's good. At least you got them to understand they were doing it wrong. So good job on that. Way to do your due diligence. Um, okay, let's see. Movie, school. Any recourse for tenants defrauded out of their apartments by landlord falsely claiming condo conversion and doing cash for keys under false premises? Actually, yes. So if it's in LA, then you can reach out to, I'd start with stayhousedla.org, but you can reach out and there are, when you, assuming they did it under the Ellis Act, which would be the proper way to do it. And then if it was a rent stabilized property or not, there's some slightly different regulations. But if it's under the Ellis Act, they have to record certain paperwork on the title to the property. And there's certain paperwork they have to turn into the city down the road. So they have to continue to essentially kind of recertify what they've done. So if they're not doing those things, then the city or the county can go after them. So I'd encourage you to reach out. Start with Stay Housed LA. I'm assuming this is in LA. There could be repercussions, and they could definitely help you go after them. And what would be an example of something that they could do? Well, they could if they re-rented the apartments and didn't do a condo conversion, you could potentially get your apartment back at the original rate you were paying back whenever this happened. So that's something that can happen. And that's why landlords need to hire the right people to make sure they do this stuff right. All right. Keep on going. All right. Okay, here's a good one. Chad, what if you're in an RSO building and paying rent? Can they give you a no fault? Can they terminate your tenancy under no fault? Yes. The answer is yes. There's slight differences between LA City and LA County, but there's a lot of hoops that they're going to have to jump through, and it will only be for specific reasons. It's a very short list, and I don't have the whole list, and I should do a video on the RSO, but it's a short list. So it would be owner move-in, if the building is eligible for that, would be an example, but they would owe relocation assistance. If it's going to be converted or to condos or demolished, that would be another reason they could give a no-fault termination. But again, relocation assistance and a process that needs to be followed. One example, if it's under the RSO and there's a tenant who's 62 years of age or older, and the landlord wants to take it off the market due to the Ellis Act, they have to give a year notice to that tenant in that case. So yes, it can be done, but there's definitely specific hoops to jump through. All right. Yeah, all night hider. So I recommend learning contract law to know how to control contracts. Yeah, there's an advantage to understanding contract law, 100%. At the end of the day, I would say another good use is to understand contract law so that you can tell whether your attorney knows what the heck they're talking about. I think that's a better use because you really shouldn't do any of this yourself as a landlord. Unlawful detainer action, forget it. You need to hire an attorney who knows what they're doing. All right. All right. Let's see. Okay. Let's see what this one is. An AB 1482 question. Nikki, if a property is exempt from AB 1482, what is the just cause rule now? Can I just not renew the lease without penalty or paying the tenant? Yeah, you wouldn't have to renew the lease. So you just have to make sure you give them essentially a notice of non-renewal, and I'd make sure it's a minimum of 60 days. But that's for LA County, unless they change things. LA City, it's different. You have to renew their lease in LA City. So, your next one says it's LA County. Okay, so LA County, that is correct. Yeah, you don't have to renew that tenancy. All right. If you want to give me thumbs up, I'd appreciate that. We have an email newsletter that I actually recommend that everybody subscribe to, tenants or landlords, because too many people find me too late and need help after things have gone wrong. If they've been subscribing to my email newsletter, it maybe would have saved them some time. Okay, here we go. So Bianca, I bought a single family home in LA City. This is my first home purchase. Do I need to give them a relocation fee? Number one, congrats on purchasing. Number two, why didn't your agent tell you this? It's not your fault, Bianca. Your agent should have informed you. Yes, you have to pay a relocation fee for owner move-in. You have to give a 60-day notice, and that there's a special process. It isn't a simple matter in LA City, just giving a 60-day notice and waiting for 60 days. Give a 60-day notice, submit it to the housing authority, pay fees to the housing authority, give the tenant the relocation assistance. Depends on how many properties you own, etc. You have to give the right relocation assistance. So it's not your fault, Bianca, that you didn't know this. Your realtor should have told you this, but congrats. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out. I'll do my best to guide you. All right. So many good stuff. Okay, here we go. Chad, yeah, if your dad's on the lease and he's over 65, yeah, he's protected. So like I said, under the Ellis Act, he'd have to have a year a notice before the Ellis Act could move forward. So there's definitely special protections. Oh, I appreciate that, All Night Hider. The email newsletter is awesome. Thank you, sir. So did we get to the end of the questions? Is that everything? Michelle. So Michelle's my operations director. I could not do this without her help. She works with me during the week and is nice enough to stay on late at night to help me out. And she's going to be there on Saturday in Newport Coast. We're having a bunny event where the bunny's going to come out, and you guys can stop by if you'd like. So Michelle's nice enough to do all this. Well, she's also helping me in the background here. So Michelle, any questions that you saw that I should answer that I missed? I think there was one. Let's see. She says yes. Only I can see that. So tell me what it is. There's a blog question to answer. I don't know how to get to the blog questions. I'm too new at this. This is only my third live stream, so I apologize. We'll get better at this, I promise. So is it about... So the LA City, I think what is the question about is the LA City renter notification, because that's brand new. So the renter protections notification, I did a video on that. That's a big deal in LA City, and it outlines, it's actually a very informative document because it outlines all the new renter protections that were put in place, the permanent renter protections that are in place. And that document, there's two things that must happen with that document. Number one is it must be given to any tenants who have a lease renewal or are signing a new lease after January 27th. I already mentioned that, so that's important. Number two, it must be posted in a common area. And this is very gray, and it doesn't actually say anything about excluding single-family houses and condos. So technically, if you're a landlord and you have a house, single family home that you have rented to a tenant, you need to post this notice in the common area. What's the common area in a house? I mean, it would basically be the front door or near the front door, or maybe near the garage, not inside. That's not a common area. So you have to, as a landlord, post the LA City Renters Protection Notice and post it in that common area. And then I recommend you take a picture. So that's important right now for LA City. Just bear in mind, LA County, they may add in something like that. So landlords in LA County, be sure you're subscribed to our channel. We'll let you know if LA County enacts something. And again, LA, let's see, we'll pull this up here. Hi, May. How can I identify the additional tenants in a single family residence in the city of Paramount, or when the tenants refuse to allow me in? Excellent question, Jaime. This is covering a couple of different things. Can tenants not let you in to a rental in LA City or LA County? The short answer is no. They must allow the landlord or landlord's representatives to come into the rental unit if they've been given proper written legal notice. And there's a few reasons a landlord can go in, and that would be to show to prospective purchasers, to show to contractors, to take care of any repairs, to test smoke detectors, test carbon monoxide detectors, and to make sure the water heater's strapped. In case you can't tell, I've gone through this many times. I've given lots of notices of entry. If a tenant refuses to let you in after proper legal notice, then they're putting themselves at risk for eviction. That is an at-fault reason to evict a tenant. So they should let you into the property. Now, identifying additional tenants, we need to see if it falls under LA City or LA County. Again, I always double check because I'm always surprised. But those additional tenants, you may not be able to terminate the tenancy for that because they're protected, depending on if it's LA County, then you can move forward in April after a 30-day notice for them to get out of there. In LA City, it's a year and then a 30-day notice. All right, so Michelle says fair market rent for inefficiencies $1,534. Let's see, Jaime, I'm going to pull you down here. Okay, so this is a good question. So if fair market rent for an efficiency is $1,534, the tenant's in a studio with a monthly rent of $1,800, pays partially for April. Can the tenant be evicted? Okay, so what Anthony is asking in this question is related to the new LA City renter protections that I have not done a video on yet. There were two additional ones. One was the economic displacement, which is where if the increase is over 10%, that a tenant, and if they move out, the tenant gets relocation assistance. The other is that LA City has put into place a law that a landlord can't move forward with an eviction for non-payment of rent. And this is any rent, whether it's COVID related or not. So the landlord can't move forward for an eviction for non-payment of rent if it is less than a certain amount. And then they have a chart. I'm going to do a video on this. So this question is the fair market rent for an efficiency. So it's based on fair market rent, not the rent that's being charged. So the fair market rent for an efficiency is $1,534. So that's the limit for an efficiency or a studio. Until the back rent owed exceeds $1,534, a landlord can't move forward with the 3-day notice, can't move forward with the unlawful detainer. Actually, I shouldn't say that. The landlord might be able to move forward with a 3-day notice. We need to talk to an attorney about that, but they can't move forward with the unlawful detainer. So in this case, the rent's $1,800. So this is where I wish I had a calculator. So let's just say, okay, so $1,534 is a number. Now pay attention here. So $1,534 is the number that LA City says that the tenant has to be behind in order to be able to evict for a studio. If the rent is $750 for that efficiency, for that studio, the tenant has to be behind just over 2 months of rent before you can move forward with an eviction. If the rent is $1,800 and the tenant misses full $1,800 payment, then the tenant can be evicted for 1 month's rent. But what Anthony is asking, well, what if I pay partially? What if I pay $300 so that I only owe $1,500? So that $1,500 falls under $1,534. So the landlord can't move forward with the eviction for $1,500 because it hasn't hit that limit yet. But Anthony, what I will tell you, landlords should not accept partial payment. So that landlord may kick back the $300 and put you in a position where you exceed that $1,534. So just bear that in mind that they may kick back the partial payment. If they accept the partial payment and you're below the $1,534, they'd have to wait until you're above $1,534 in order to be able to move forward. So I hope that makes sense. I know there's a lot of numbers in there. But that's the answer. So, all right, some more questions have come in. Let's see. LA City gave 90. Okay, let's see. This should be interesting. Bianca, you gave a 90-day notice in September 2022, expired in December. Would I have to give them a 60-day notice? It's non-RSO single family house. Yeah. So here's the big old wrench in this one. That notice you gave in September 2022 was not a valid notice because you couldn't terminate a tenancy in LA City for owner move-in at that point in time. So that notice was invalid. So you basically have to start over. So that's the short answer there. And that's why you need the guidance from an attorney. Let's see. All right, let's pull this up. Fashionista. That's fun to say. The 45 million of stay housed LA funds you mentioned earlier, can only landlords apply for that, or can tenants also apply for back rent funds? A great question. So it's as far as it being stay housed LA, we don't know for sure if that's how it's going to be distributed. I just know that stay housed LA, according to the Board of Supervisors, has some funding now. We don't know yet how that 45 million is going to be distributed. So it could be. I don't think it's going to only be for landlords. I think it's going to be similar to the housing is key, where tenants or landlords could apply. And then I think it will apply for back rent. Now, that fashionista, have you already moved out? So have you given up possession of the property and you want help for back rent, even though you've given up possession? Because there's some folks who that has happened. And under the Housing is Key program, that was allowed. You could get rent covered even if the tenant had moved out. So they may adopt that. Hopefully I'll have more information on this soon on these funds. I'll do a video once we have an update and once those funds are ready to go out. So that's a good question. More good questions coming in. I'm having fun with this. That's it. We're going 24 hours. Michelle, can you last 24 hours? I'm just kidding. I wouldn't do that to you. All right. Let's see here. Alec, thanks for tuning in. Newly single family owner of a foreclosure property. Michelle says, nope, she can't go over 24 hours. As a newly single family owner of a foreclosure property in LA, COVID moratorium set to expire in 8 days. What are my rights to evict tenants who are currently paying rent month to month? Alec, great question. So that was an interesting thing about foreclosures in Los Angeles. So under the eviction moratorium, whoever got the property, so if it went back to the bank, the lender couldn't evict, and if it went to a third party, that third party couldn't evict. So that is about to change. It will depend where in LA your property is, Alec. If it's in LA City, you're going to have to follow special rules to get the tenants out. If it's in LA County and it's a single family home and you give them the exemption language from AB 1482, which is tough because you just bought it, I guess theoretically you could terminate their tenancy with a 60-day notice. The other thing, because I used to list bank owned homes, the other thing we can do is cash for keys. That's going to be your most straightforward route to go, is to offer cash for keys. If it's non-RSO, the cash for keys agreement is easier and it's binding. Under the RSO, if you try to do cash for keys, there's rules to follow. So cash for keys is your answer, Alec. We did a video on that. It's an older video. Look for that. It's time to do a new one on that. All right. Oh, fashionista, you haven't moved out yet. That's good. So you should be able to apply for those funds since you haven't moved out. All right. Okay, so Chad, and there's some of the others in here are commenting as well. How's this going to affect the rental market? Make it easier to find something new to rent, or harder, something affordable, or just in general? These regulations, and I went through this a little bit before, basically are going to push a lot of smaller mom and pop landlords out. So we're going to see fewer opportunities for rentals. And we're going to see, unless some corporations come in and start to build some big apartment buildings, we're going to see less houses for rent in Los Angeles. That's the unfortunate side effect of the regulations. Attempting to protect tenants in the long run are actually going to hurt tenants and lead to higher rents. Really, the affordability crisis in Los Angeles is related to not having enough rentals. If you had enough rentals in the area, then landlords wouldn't be able to charge the rents that they're charging. It's supply and demand. And I know people are going to want to argue that, but at the end of the day, that's it. Supply and demand. If suddenly 2 or 3 million rentals dropped into Los Angeles overnight, that would dramatically change rents. It would dramatically change the homeless problem, homelessness that's there. So anyway, it's all about supply, and this is going to constrain supply. All right. Okay, so I think we've answered enough questions for tonight. It's just over an hour. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. Hope this was helpful. A few things I'm going to ask. Subscribe to my newsletter, subscribe to the channel, make sure you like my videos. All these things I'm asking you to do. The other thing I'll ask is, if you know anybody who's looking to buy or sell, definitely please reach out to us so we can help you all throughout Southern California. If you have friends and family out of state, let us know, because we can find an agent for them there and we can interview the agent, make sure they're going to do a good job like we would do for you here. So definitely reach out. If there's any questions I missed, which there were quite a few, I apologize. And you can definitely reach out to us through or contact us. You can do that. You can give me a call. You can also post it under the video and I will come back and answer those. And of course, there's going to be more lives like this and we'll get better, like I said. Thanks for tuning in. Anything else I forgot, Michelle? She always reminds me of something. Michelle's my operations director, for anybody who's wondering who this random person I'm talking to is. So, well, I appreciate you tuning in. I appreciate all the support. I appreciate seeing all the folks out there that have come back to watch my channel and ask questions. I appreciate your support. Anybody who's new, I appreciate your support as well. And it really means a lot to me. So thanks for tuning in. This has been Christian Walsh, Wire Associates, and we want to hear from you. Of course, technical difficulties ending it as well. I swear it's going to end.